Hi, again, welcome back. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go over some key vocabulary in economics. What I would recommend doing is maybe going to the back of your notebook or somewhere else to write this stuff down. This is definitely going to be some definitions that you're going to want to write down. In economics, more than government, there are some terms that you're just going to need to know. Um, and to make matters worse, kind of like biology, um, there are words that you might be familiar with, but in economics they mean something different. Like this kind of idea of when we use the word need. In economics, it doesn't count as a need unless it is, absolutely necessary to life, right? So you're going to want to write these down just because in economics, sometimes words that we're already familiar with mean something a little more concrete than how we use them. And the first one is economics, and we already kind of know this one, right? There's lots of different ways to define this, but maybe the one that we use the most in class is economics is the study of choices people make in a world of scarcity. This is a more basic one. You can even go more basic than that and say it's a study of choices, right? So, with this definition, you can be pretty loose and still be correct. The next key thing is scarcity, right? This is the fact that there's not enough resources for everyone to have everything they want. And we're all very aware of scarcity at all times, I think, right? So we talked about this in class quite a bit, but again, just being able to see it one more time with maybe a little more in-depth definition can be helpful. So again, take a moment to write down the definition. Okay. Last but not least, well, this isn't last, sorry. These are the basic economic questions, and this ties again with your test question today. So the basic economic questions deal with a country or business and what they have to decide when they want to make something. The first question they have to ask is what are they going to what do they want to produce? How do they produce it? And for whom to produce? So if you're Apple Computer or just Apple in general, you need to determine what it is you're going to make and how much of it you're going to make. Are you going to focus on iPhones? Are you going to focus on iPads? Are you going to do both? That's fine, but then you can only do so many iPads and so many iPhones. So are you going to make more iPhones than iPads? Or are you going to make more iPads than iPhones? Are you going to make computers? Are you going to make iPods? All of these things are questions that Apple has to ask because they too are limited. They cannot have all the resources that they'd like to have. So they need to pick and choose, and they need to be strategic about what they make and how much of it. The second question is how to produce it. Okay, you're going to make iPads. That's good, but now how are you going to do that? What's the most efficient way to produce iPads? Do you make iPads in the United States? Do you make iPads in Taiwan or in China? Do you make parts of them and have them assembled in another country so you don't have to pay as much tax in the country where it's made? These are really questions that businesses have to try to answer as well. And then lastly is for whom to produce. Even though Apple likes it if everyone buys their stuff, they really are aiming at a specific group of people. They're aiming for people who are 35, maybe 40 and under. That's kind of their age target. Although if someone who's older buys their product, they're not going to be upset. But if you watch a commercial for Apple or anything like that, you can tell it's kind of geared towards the young millennial type person. So again, although it's nice to have a product that you can market to everyone, usually that doesn't work unless you're selling something like Cheerios or something that has mass appeal. With most products, you want to focus on a specific group of people. Something we've already talked about is need versus wants. Again, a need is something you have to have or something you can't live without. And again, when we say something you can't live without, we mean it. And a want is something you would like to have. And again, needs are limited. We only have so many needs, and once they are fulfilled, we don't need any more. Whereas wants are unlimited. Now we're getting into some words that maybe we haven't seen yet, or at least in class. The first one is producer and consumer. Producers are the people or groups of people who make things to satisfy customers' needs and wants. And a consumer is the people who decide to buy them. There's a pretty good chance that almost everyone in class has been a producer. There's a guaranteed chance that everyone in class has been a consumer. If you've ever had a job, you've been a producer. You've made something, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be tangible or upfront. But if you've ever been paid to do something, you've produced something. Consumer, if you've ever bought something, then you're a consumer. So that's what a consumer is. Next one are also new terms. These are goods versus services. A good is something that you can use or consume. So this would be food or a CD or a book or an MP3 or a car or clothes or anything like that. It can get kind of complicated, especially in the technical world nowadays, but a good is something that's tangible, something you can see, something that you can consume and feel or use one of your senses to experience. Whereas a service is something that someone does for you. So these would be things like getting a haircut, getting dinner, or even me teaching you social studies. These are services. You don't really get anything that is tangible. You can't exactly feel the doctor, trying to decide if you have a cold like me or not, right? All you can tell is that they're doing something, right? That's a service. So again, a service is when someone does something for you. A good is a tangible thing. Now, again, just kind of as a fun fact, over time, especially in the United States, we have switched from being an economy that produces mostly goods to being an economy that produces mostly services. And we've kind of seen that progression in a lot of countries. Countries kind of start out as agricultural countries where they grow food, and most of the people where jobs are subsistence farmers, people growing enough food for them to eat, maybe have a little extra so they can buy things like simple clothes or furniture or something like that. Then you kind of switch to a more industrial nation where you produce a lot of goods, a lot of factories and things like that. And then a lot of countries progress into a more service-based nation, like the United States. A lot of what we sell and export are services, things like banking. Almost any transaction of any card in the world is somehow linked to the United States. So again, although services come with a lot of benefits, there can be some downsides. The nice thing about having an economy where a lot of goods are produced is that it tends to benefit everyone quite a bit, whereas a service-based economy tends to benefit the people at the top, so bosses and stuff like that a little more, although that's not always the case. Next is the difference between capital goods and consumer goods. I tried to break down capital goods a little bit. Again, that's the most complicated out of all of the factors of production. But capital goods are any goods used by an organization to produce other goods. So office building, equipment, machinery, land, money, all of these things are capital goods. Whereas a consumer good is a final good or service. So again, you can have a capital service as well. If you are flying to Dallas to have a big meeting for your job, and you take a taxi to the airport and your company pays for the taxi, that's an example of a capital service, right? But anyway, again, the consumer good is the final good. So that is when the good, it's its last home. It's meant is to be consumed by a person or a group, not necessarily used to make other things. And again, just a quick review of the productive resources, factors of production, right? And again, you've got natural resources, which are things that are provided by nature. And again, these are things that are typically untouched by humans or very little. So water is usually the best example. You know, the fact that water goes through pipes is okay, but for the most part, water isn't changed fundamentally by human hands. So we can consider that a natural resource. Sunlight is a really good one, right? Soil, things like that. But wood in your pencils, a lot of you in your document where you turned in the answer to the question for pencils, a lot of you listed wood, and I bet a lot of you assumed it would have been a natural resource, but it's really kind of more of a capital resource, right? The kind of wood that a company uses to make a pencil is not the kind of wood that you tear out of a tree. It's, you know, usually chipped up wood, cheap wood. Even if it was made out of into a board first and then sold to a pencil company, it would still be considered more of a capital resource. Labor, and again, any worker at any job is an example of labor. So again, it's not just the person that puts the eraser on the pencil or something like that. It goes from the boss, the owner of the company, all the way down to the person that sweeps the floor and cleans the bathroom at the factory. Capital resource, again, are manufactured materials or human-made materials used to create other products. And lastly, entrepreneur. Typically, this is one person or a small group of people, and they're the person that come up with the idea for the product. A lot of you wrote on your answers for the homework that you thought the first step in the process was maybe labor or natural resources, but the entrepreneur is the first step in making a product. Someone has to come up with the idea. Someone has to take the risk. And this can be one of the hardest things about having a business, right? It's scary. It's very risky. And just because maybe you have a great idea, you don't know it's a great idea until you try it. And to try it costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of risk. So entrepreneur is maybe the most important part in all of these four areas, in the sense that, you know, getting capital resources, getting natural resources can be relatively easy-ish, I guess you could say. Labor too, whereas having the idea for a new product or a new business can be kind of difficult, and to make sure it works out and succeeds. Usually the entrepreneur is the original owner of the business, but in a lot of cases, businesses that run today, the entrepreneur maybe doesn't alive anymore or has sold the company or something like that. So again, a lot of people forget how important the entrepreneur is to the process. Okay, that's it for this. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email. Just kind of want to give you a heads up. We'll have one more class. So today's Monday, so Wednesday. So that means that on Friday we will be taking our first test in economics. There's been a lot of test questions and things covered so far. I'd ask you to review the test questions that you had today so that you can be prepared for it. I know it seems like it's coming up fast, but we've already been kind of having class for 2 weeks now. So, or maybe 3 even, right? So, no, it's been 2. So again, make sure that you're prepared. We will spend a little time next time in class reviewing it, reviewing for the test. Okay, thank you, and I'm sorry not there today. I'm hoping to feel better soon.